300 miles west of Momo's stomping grounds is the small town and farming community of Maryville, Missouri. Here, an entirely different monster lurks within the darkness, one that strikes out from the shadows. Maryville seems to harbor a mysterious phenomenon. Strange entities that darken any crevice or corner. Shadow people.
Generally, people see shadow people to begin with out of the corner of their eye, just a fleeting shadow. When they turn their head, it's gone. They're usually taller than a normal human, but they're human-shaped, two-dimensional. Usually, people do not see a shadow person's face.
When you're in a pitch-black room and you see something darker than that, you start asking questions.
Fear isn't quite covered. If you've ever had something happen where you were shocked suddenly, and you feel your body chill, and you feel the blood drain from your face, and your heart's racing, that's what it feels like when one of these shadow people pops in on you unexpectedly, and it scares the nonsense out of you.
The shadows we know are cast by light, but shadow people are creatures of the dark, on the prowl for victims, and one has plagued Cody Lilly since he was young.
In the middle of the night, I woke up just freezing. Just had this really tight feeling in my chest. Standing in the far corner of the room, there it was, staring at me. Had faintly glowing red eyes, and it was darker than the darkness around it. So I sat there just scared, staring at this thing pretty much all night. Throughout high school, I saw it regularly. Always in the same area, always looked the same. The wide, flat-brimmed hat, the red eyes.
He saw the Shadow Man so often, he named it the Cowboy.
There's a type of shadow person called the Hat Man, who is wearing a fedora, of all things. I've talked to many people who've encountered that over and over and over, and it's got to be the same thing.
By the late 1990s, the internet was awash with reports of shadow people. Message boards filled with hundreds of witnesses and dozens of variations. In cultures around the world, scary, shadowy beings are a staple. The ancient Hebrews believed in death shadows that stalk the underworld. In Islam, the supernatural jinn can be a companion or a killer in the shadows. The object of Cody Lilly's fear fits one of the prevailing patterns. Tall, dark figure, wide-brimmed hat, pursuing its victim relentlessly.
Well, after I graduated high school, I moved out, went to college. There's a huge span of time where it just wasn't there. But in the back of my mind, I was always waiting for it to show up again.
Just when he thought the dark shadows of his past were behind, they struck again.
I was driving around in my car. I heard a loud noise coming from the engine. Steam started spewing out. So I pulled over into the apartment parking lot that I was living at the time. Had no idea what was going on. And so I'm on the phone, sitting in the driver's seat, broad daylight. And then I see something move out of the corner of my eye. And there's my cowboy. He bends down to look at me and knocks on the window. I was completely terrified. I was shaking, and then it just dissolved like a film reel was blowing apart. It was insane. I think it came back saying, hey, I haven't left you. I'm still around. I'm still watching.
It's been 2 years since that day in the parking lot. Cody lives with his wife in their home outside of Kansas City. He still dreads the Shadow's next visit.
Every night when I go to bed, you still look at the shadows just waiting for it to pop out.
Just a few miles across town from Cody, Another Maryville family was also waging a battle against these shadow forces. Brandon White, his wife, and 2 sons lived a happy life together. When Travis was 9 years old,
Dad, where are my video games?
the family moved to an old Victorian house just outside of town.
We lived out in the middle of nowhere. You could see the stars. It was that far away from the glow of society.
Dad, I'm gonna go see my new room.
Travis was the oldest son, a cheerful, spirited child that loved to read.
He was a really good kid. People loved him. He was outgoing, funny, intelligent, and just smart as a whip.
Inside this big house on the prairie, the shadows were gathering.
We actually were seeing strange goings-on around the house. Just things that we couldn't explain, just by saying it's an old house.
It's like that feeling of there's something watching you, or there's something out of place. I woke up in the middle of the night, had a strange feeling, and I looked at the foot of my bed, and I saw a figure, a very shadowy figure. Dad! It felt very real. Dad! I was just scared. Dad!
In Maryville, Missouri, there are rumors about shadow people. One night, 9-year-old Travis White woke up to this sinister world of shadows.
I was scared. I was inconsolably scared. I had no idea what was going on, and I couldn't even rationalize why.
The shadow people experience is as real as you're sitting in a room talking to someone. They're looming over the bed or leaning through a doorway. They have blood red, blazing eyes, and they seem to elicit an unnatural fear in people.
Dad, I saw the shadow again.
My dad told me it was probably a bad dream. He did the whole father, make sure there was nothing in the closet or under the bed, and told me to go back to sleep.
Travis's father thought it was just a bad dream until his own horror story began.
I started seeing full-figure shadow people walking around the house. And I didn't know what to make of it. I thought maybe I was seeing things, because I really didn't know how to explain that.
As the years went by, Brandon didn't want to alarm his son. Little did he know, Travis was only barely holding the shadows at bay.
Everything seemed to be going well. I was considering going into a seminary. I had a girlfriend. I had a lot of things that I was looking forward to. In the back of my mind, I kept thinking, it's gonna show up again.
Eventually, the shadow monster stepped into the light.
When I was 17 years old, I would wake up and this face would kind of be there. And that started happening more and more frequently to the point where it was almost nightly.
The shadow had taken a step closer, revealing its awful face.
It's when people can see them straight on when it gets really scary.
What I saw had a dark, blood red colored face, very scarred. It looked like it had been burnt. Its eyes were black. Its nose was very obviously broken. It was bent out of shape. The face was very disfigured.
And then there was the voice.
It was telling me to do things. The face told me to cut people out of my life, told me to ignore my family, to ignore my girlfriend, to ignore my best friends. And when that didn't work, the face started telling me to hurt them.
Travis was losing control, the shadow taking over.
I definitely felt fear for the safety of the people I cared about.
Finally, one night, Travis knew he was at the crossroads.
It was frightening. Watch this person that you've known his whole life turn into somebody completely different. It's scary.
I saw the shadow again. He told me to kill you.
And all of a sudden, you could just see his eyes fixate. I could literally see the blood rush from his face. He became pale. And he started shaking.
Off in the distance, I see this shadowy figure.
And I could actually see two dark figures standing there. One of them was just the faintest orange glow where his face should be. That really freaked me out. You know, this is the part in the horror movies where you do something stupid and get yourself killed. I shouldn't have done this, but I turned around and I was just angry.
You're not welcome here!
You know, this is my son.
Go away!
Brandon unleashed all his fury at the dark monster that had tormented his son.
And I told him to go away, and they did.
And in that moment, the shadows blasted through the trees.
Part of me is afraid of the face coming back with that kind of strength, but at the same time, I feel like if I beat it once, I can beat it again.
I don't think that you can ever get rid of these things. You know, they're still out there. And the possibility exists that, you know, if you're not careful at any time, you could open yourself up to them.